Good afternoon. This is Callum from AI Ventures. Today with me we have Suzette. Suzette from Simple Marketing. Suzette, welcome to the Sydney Startup Show.
Thank you. I'm really glad to be here.
Suzette, it's great to have you into Sydney again. This has been a long journey from you from Canberra.
Yes, for people who are not aware where Canberra is the nation capital of Australia. It's about 3 hours south of Sydney.
Suzette, tell us a bit more about Simple Marketing AI.
Well, SimpleMarketing.ai is a platform that actually generates unique and original marketing content for small businesses and entrepreneurs. So it does it by using AI, a natural language processing AI that actually generates and almost is indistinguishable from humans. It doesn't use templates, and it just uses a few keywords from the person, and then you're off and running.
I've been quite fortunate to get an early release or early beta of the platform, and I absolutely love it. It's great to use the technology, and I can't wait for us to kind of get to a point where this becomes the way we do things ordinarily. But maybe for our audiences who are probably not privy to what it does and what problems it solves, why don't we kind of rewind the clock a little bit? Why is this the world's biggest problem, and why am I so excited? And I'll
Yeah, it's probably the same reason why I am. And that's mostly because I don't have to write my own content anymore. So how it came about is that I knew I had been running a consulting company for a long time in Canberra. We did a lot of work. But I wanted to move across into internet marketing and take what I did and provide that for small businesses, entrepreneurs and that sort of thing. But I really, really sucked at internet marketing. I was not consistent. I could not write constantly as was required for content marketing, and I found it very difficult. I joke about the fact that I was more upset about the fact that I couldn't sell a $500 course than I could sell consultancy services, which I could do quite easily. And so when I actually found that the technology in AI had got to the point where it could actually write content for humans, it's a very almost indistinguishably from humans, I could see an opportunity to be able to couple the ability to actually write with this issue of what is facing a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs of consistently having to market themselves online, to consistently having to create content that engages and positions you as an authority in your market. And this is an overhead or a burden for a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs that they just are not prepared for. It's not, although they needed to market in the offline world, it was not to the same level. So being able to have something that creates the content or the first draft of your content for you very quickly is such a significant productivity tool. And one thing about this is it is not marketing automation. What it is a productivity tool at its base level. It helps you get your first draft. It doesn't do everything for you. You as the person, you as the owner or the entrepreneur is still critical in the path and still critical in the process.
I mean, this is just something I want to take a step back a little bit even further and kind of talk about the reflection that I have. I mean, I've been in large corporates like yourselves as well. And I've had, like, for example, when I was at Microsoft or Deloitte, any one of these places, I would not have to worry about content writing myself as a business leader. I would have a PR comms team. They would have they wouldn't necessarily write the PR themselves, but they would write the brief, which would then go to an agency. And then the agency would produce that, and then there'll be rounds of meetings, many rounds of meetings. And these things took a while, by the way. I mean, I still remember the days where I will not name which one of them it was, but most of them would tell me that, I usually need to give them, I was probably the worst person because I would usually kind of stretch the boundaries, and I needed a press release done in kind of like less than 4 weeks, right? When I said something like I need it done in 4 weeks, they'd be like, no, like that couldn't happen, right? Because the runway needed to be very, very long, at least 8 weeks, maybe 12 ideally. And then you get a really, really awesome press release with lunches and everything that all comes with that. So I didn't have to worry about writing content myself. I've had lots of people writing content for me. And then obviously running a small company, the world is very different. And so, and because this is not necessarily a skill I personally possess, and even if I did, it probably took me way too much time to do it. And I can probably relate to many founders that I know where they just want to move on with the business. That's not their core strength. And this is probably one skill that you probably, it's really hard to find people who write really good copy. So how do you see this industry, and what percentages of people that are trying to do this, and how important it is to do that in terms of writing copy and writing articles or blogs or any one of those things? Because I'm not sure, whilst I think everybody understands digital marketing, I'm not sure everybody understands the importance and the significance of this.
And how much of an overhead it is. And it's interesting that you mentioned the word copy. I think there's copy and then there's content. And I think people lump them together and they're not quite the same thing. There's copy is a subset of content. So copy is usually when you're actually dealing with sales copy, and that I think still is very much you need a really good copywriter for that, because it's someone who needs to understand the sales cycle and the sales message. Marketing content, on the other hand, is generally, or content marketing, and this is part of the reason why we've positioned Simple Marketing in the area of content marketing primarily, is about positioning you and your business as the authority in that particular niche. So with saying that though, you need to actually to do that, and with attention spans as it is at the moment, you need to be front of mind and in person quite constantly. So it's a huge burden of, you mentioned 4 weeks to do a press release. Well, as a online business, you need to be putting out content 2, 3, 4 times, if not more, a week, much less. And you don't have those kind of runways, much less the overheads of actually being out of time. So this is why I mentioned it's a productivity tool. It's about shortening that runway to minutes, not weeks, as in the case that you example, or even hours as it is for most. Even as a business owner that really is very good at this, you also touched on the point where should you be doing it? The reality is, even if you are very good at this, then all that means is that you're going to be able to turn around the draft that the AI creates for you in a much shorter period of time and at a much higher quality. If you're not so great at it, well, that's all right. I've got an article on my LinkedIn profile where I specifically deliberately put it up where I've bolded the text that I've put in. And it's only at the very bottom of the article that people find out it's completely written by the AI, aside from, I think, 6 words. Because people don't fundamentally understand that it can write a good first draft, but it is a draft. You still need to own it, you need to validate it, edit it, and ensure that it's right for the market that you want, and that it's the message that you want to provide on that day, for instance.
Do you have any opinion of how much content somebody has to produce? I mean, I've heard some things like, for example, I tune into Gary Vee, for example, and he says you got to have to produce content almost every few hours.
Gary Vaynerchuk is probably an extreme case. There's different rules of thought in this area. I tend to not believe that you need to do it quite as often as that. You absolutely will get a faster result, but most businesses really, they just can't handle that sort of level. Realistically, you really should be providing at least 2 or 3 good pieces of reasonable size content, be it podcast or a video cast like this one. It could be an article or a couple of articles, and then maybe some small touch of front of mind type of content. But the other thing with it too is that you don't need to create completely original content for all of those. You could make one piece of like a hero piece for the week, and then the rest of the content will come from that. For example, if you have a video that you do, you could then actually get the AI to expand on that and provide you some related content around that, and then take some parts of that content for your things like your tweets and your Instagram and those sort of things. So it's not about necessarily creating completely new content each and every day, but it is about having a consistent message.
And, given that you work with many different early stage companies, mid-sized companies in particular, independent of, I guess, the stage the company's at, and different types, are there specific types of content or specific types of companies that need to be generating content a lot more than others that you're finding where this is probably a lot more useful?
I think the days of anybody saying that they don't have to is, I think, gone. I think pretty much everybody, particularly in the with COVID, a lot of what were traditionally bricks and mortar businesses having to move online. A lot of organizations have had to adapt. So I think the concept of being able to just rely on traditional marketing is probably is gone. The level, though, will change depending on how much engagement and how much interaction you're having with your people. There's a chocolatier here in Sydney, actually, and called Chocolate Johnny. He actually puts a GoPro around his neck and he live streams the whole chocolate process, going around his shop, and he's very big on social media. So he has taken it to a bricks and mortar business has taken it quite to that quite an extended degree, and he's having a huge amount of benefit from both his business, but also him as a brand as well. Yet you don't necessarily have to quite go to that level in most cases. But it is a good, the more you engage, the more front of mind, people get a lot of information and you need to cut through that clutter. And this is a good way to do it.
And how did you stumble on the idea that we can have AI that could write these types of content?
Well, this is where I come back that because I had struggled with this problem myself, I'm not a person who likes social media. I've never liked it. I do it for business. And when I had to try to promote my online courses and things, I struggled. So I absolutely had a very deep understanding of the issue at play here. So when I coupled that with my experience with government and corporates around managing big systems thinking, information, how people were processing, I could see the synergies between the two. And one of the things is as soon as I saw that AI, I could see the potential and I could see how it could solve this fundamental problem that small business face of trying to consistently generate content of a good quality in a fraction of the time.
And so, tell us the story of how did you end up setting up your startup?
So that pretty much is when I saw the AI, my husband, actually, Craig Tomlin, he's our CMO. I sort of floated the idea with him. We knew for a number of reasons that we needed a third founder, a technical founder, mostly because we didn't want me being sidetracked doing the technical. So we brought in a third founder called, and his name is Aman Quatra. Amazing person, had the AI background, has been fantastic. We then, when we were made aware of the AI Ventures virtual incubator, we became a member of that. And look, we're absolutely grateful for that because it has opened doors for us. We have engaged some strategic partners who are mentors in that program. We have a great relationship with you and your team. And it helped us to not only actually work out what we were going to do in our roadmap, but it also gave us clear understanding of how we could actually market and who, conversely, we shouldn't be marketing to, particularly both from a customer's perspective, but also from an investor perspective, because I think a lot of people forget you are marketing when you are going to investors, and you need to think about it in that way. It's a different kind of marketing, but it is still marketing yourself and your business.
And to the investors that are out there that may be wondering, wow, I mean, it sounds like you've got a great technology. Tell us a bit more about, any tractions you've had, investments you need or may not need, where you're at as an investor, for all the investors out there that are wondering, how do I get into this?
Well, it's been a pretty wild ride for the last 2 to 3 weeks, particularly the last 2 weeks. We had a clear strategy around our marketing. Our go-to marketing was always going to be engaging strategic partners. We built the platform my background is collaborating. I developed an IT consultancy originally off the back of working with other businesses. So for me, the only way to grow a business is to work with others and to partners. So we built that fundamentally into our platform. So one of the things that we did was I have recently been introduced to Clubhouse. For people who are not aware of what Clubhouse is, it's an app where you have to be invited in. It's iPhone only, but they are working on Android. But there are some really amazing conversations in. And one of the things that I have found with this is it actually has worked very well for me because it allows me to connect with people the same way I normally do. So we've been looking with strategic partners. In the last couple of weeks alone, each week we are doubling our user base. We have some deals on the table with a number of different organisations where we would not have been able to get any access to these they're around the world, not just, but some of them are actually in Europe, some of them are in the US. We had strong connections in the US and Canada. We had practically no connections or people that we in there. And it's opened up markets that we would not have had access to through this process. And the exponential growth has meant that we have now, and we're in a good position, but in a bad position in so much as that we now need to ride that train and actually get some more staff in very quickly. So we're in a situation where we are looking at taking some investments soon, but we're with that traction, we're looking, sort of how do we do this? Do we take on, actually use a loan in the short term, or do we actually take investment? And all these sort of things are going through. So this typical startup type situation with an investment has become a good problem to have, but it is definitely a problem that we're experiencing at the moment. We're a product of our own success.
I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, the many things you guys have going for you guys that's really, really awesome. I mean, obviously you have an MVP that's out in the marketplace. Could you just tell us a little bit more about how long you've been out in the marketplace? And I know I was involved in the beta phase, but I can't keep track of that now.
So we launched publicly about mid-February. The first 2 weeks we had absolute nightmare of a problem with domains. We had a lot of issues with the domain, the server, the front end server. Our platform was nice and stable, but no one could actually get to us, so we had a lot of issues around that. We've got an absolutely amazing tech team that was helping on it. We've had to adapt our front end platform, and in fact we're currently in the process of moving it off the existing platform it uses and bringing it back into WordPress if nothing else, mostly because it gives us the flexibility to do what we want with our own platform. So realistically we've only been effectively in the market for probably no longer than about 2 to 3 weeks, and we're finding that our growth is doubling each week from that. It's been phenomenal.
I know we've had a conversation over multiple times, and I think before the launch there were some numbers. We talked a little bit about the projections that you had, and I remember you saying something like, well, I think those are conservative projections, or but what's that been journey like, having some projections before launch? I mean, you had lots of projections, presumably before launch, and then post launch, and then what's it like?
I thought our projections were reasonable and based on good, sort of solid, sort of reasonable, we had done a lot of competitor analysis and what was happening for them and how things went for them when they did their launch, sort of October, November last year. We do have quite a number of different competitors. They've got a quite very different approach to us, but we gave us at least a benchmark. Had some being conservative, but also what is our, if everything really went well. On top, we have blown all of those projections out of the water. We, with Clubhouse particularly, for instance, I'm using Clubhouse as our number one channel, and what's happening is I'm engaging with people in there. I'm getting them interested in understanding content marketing. We're funneling them through that, and from that, conversely, they're finding out about simple marketing, and we're, as such, they're in turn showing it to their customers. And this weekend alone, for instance, we've got a 3-day summit, and we estimate there's probably going to be conservatively, it'll probably be between 3,000 and 5,000 people who will engage with us just this weekend alone. And this summit we started organising it last week. So the everything is compressed on Colour, whereas something like this kind of 3-day summit you would normally take weeks, if not months, to organise. We've done it in a week and a half, and we're going to have more traction than we would have if it was an in-person one anyway.
So it's interesting you say that, and let's just challenge the idea a little bit on this. Now, obviously, Clubhouse is great. Thank you, Suzette, for teaching me Clubhouse. So that's been great, and I've got a bit of learning to do on Clubhouse. Well, one of the great things about Clubhouse I like is you don't have to worry about writing content. You can just show up and you can, walk your way through and hopefully get promoted, and so forth. But the advantage there is, unlike LinkedIn and Facebook and various other places where you have to generate a lot of content, would that mean that, once you get on Clubhouse, you don't have to worry about content? Or am I, what does that really mean?
It's interesting. I had somebody the other day that their reason for not getting onto Clubhouse is they had a huge following on Facebook and other channels, and they said they don't want to actually split their focus. I actually think Clubhouse is like any other channel in this respect. You need to have it as part of your overall marketing strategy. The way we're utilizing it is that we're using it to feed our other channels. And so I think content goes hand in hand with it. We're actually, I've created the Content Marketing Club on Clubhouse. So for us, creating an ecosystem around content marketing, doesn't matter which format, it's still going to be important, has a halo effect of it. Our Instagram, my LinkedIn, the organization's social medias are increasing rapidly. So if you actually have a strategy where you're bringing them back in to, essentially think of as Clubhouse as part of your funnel, it's a very powerful way, because then you're engaging with people. They know, like, and trust you from that interaction, but you still have to integrate with them. You still have to actually do business with them. They still need to be able to show you to the rest of their organization or to their colleagues and things like that. And that's where written-based content comes into play as well. So I think it's definitely a synergy, not competing.
One of the big things that a lot of the startups talk to us about is how to get into the US market and how to get into the global international markets. Sounds to me like, is that still a valid question? I mean, given that you're already getting the level of traction that you need internationally, in Australia and internationally, but we all understand the US market, and some of those large markets are still some of the best customers generally anyway, in terms of price propensities and pretty much all the metrics we need. Do you really still need to think about some of the things that I know you and I have had a conversation about, going to the US market, etc.? Is that a valid question anymore?
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. We were lucky in so much as that I already had some, pretty much because of that failed situation of me trying to do online marketing, I had some very strong connections and networks of people in the US and Canada already. So we in that respect, I did start from not from a sort of a stop. But at the same time, for instance, as I mentioned, the European market had no connections into the European market, and already we're making inroads, and quite significant inroads, into the European markets. So if you are looking at an international expansion, something like Clubhouse is a way to get those connections very quickly and be able to feed them back into your more traditional markets or marketing processes. So yeah, absolutely. I think we are a global economy now, and it doesn't really matter where you are. If somebody is delivering that service and it solves your problem, well, that's great. And the reality is, for example, one of our strategic partners, who has actually come directly from Clubhouse, she is promoting us to a conference next week, Simple Marketing, to the conference. And that conference is a 20,000 person black businesswoman conference. So the niche is black women in business, and there's 20,000 people. It's a scale that us as Australians just cannot have here. It's not like, you can go to niches, and those niches will still be bigger than an entire Australian market, for instance. So I absolutely think it's still very much part of your go-to market strategy.
But in the traditional sense of going to market, into the US and European and international markets in generally, historically there's been a very strong need to have a point of presence, to have legal incorporations in those markets, to have certain distribution partners in place. And there's a lot of mechanics involved in being physical, not necessarily physical, but to have legal structures in place to be able to do that. How has Clubhouse or any other platform disintermediated all of that? And do you still feel like you have to do something different operationally or commercially or anything else beyond just being on Clubhouse and doubling down on that?
Look, first up, you probably you know my background is in compliance and regulation and working with government. So from my perspective, make sure that you've got your good corporate governance in place. We spent more on getting our company structure right. We got the right advice, and in fact, the person who gave us that advice came through from AI Ventures and was one of your mentors, David Kenny, or through that program, because it's absolutely critical that you have the right corporate governance in place if you are looking at engaging with international markets. Particularly, the next thing with that is also making sure that predominantly that you are dealing with clients and customers from countries that we have good free trade agreements in place. So the US, Canada, and the UK, and some of the European countries in the EU, Australia has very good free trade agreements in place. What that means is you don't need to necessarily go and have a corporate structure or a corporate presence in those countries to do business in them. We can actually do that as an Australian company as long as we have the proper corporate governance in place here and a good accountant. Very, very important. It's not worth skimping on as a startup on either setting up your company well and having that good strategic advice. If you have that, well, then you don't need to go down that path, and you can expand knowing that you've essentially covered your butt on those sort of things. But I think eventually we will probably open an office formally in the US, because that has always been something where we're going to move to. But I don't think we need to do it immediately.
And in terms of the growth that you're experiencing at the moment, that's organic, and with Clubhouse and your own ability to, I guess, prove your own point that content marketing does work. Maybe just kind of take a step back on content marketing. How have you used content marketing yourself? And how much have you used it yourself to generate enough content to then build trust? And how are you eating your own dog food, as I say?
Well, all of our own social media challenges, including or channels, sorry, not challenges, channels are provided by our AI. We very clearly define that, or in our case, that the content has been written by AI. Our customers do not need to do that because they personally are vetting and editing it before they publish it, so they are taking ownership of the copyright around the content. Yeah, so our Instagram, for instance, all of our Instagram posts are all AI generated inspirations. As I mentioned before, even my personal LinkedIn has a number of articles on it that is written by AI, mostly because it's much easier and much faster for us to just use our own to write instead of actually writing it ourselves. It's a significant productivity saving for us. Moving forward, though, we're also having some fun with the AI as well. One of the things that we do in a Clubhouse on a 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, is we do AI's Got Talent. So we actually get it to generate song lyrics based on words that the audience provides us, and then we sing it back in. It's a fun way to show that we can actually use the generator to generate a range of different content. So we actually have fortunate in that we can use it in the back end to generate a lot of additional content that you as a public user at the moment can't get access to. For some of our clients who engage on us on a more personal level, and we work with them directly, we can actually incorporate a number of those special content types within, such as writing a podcast script, for instance, if you wanted that, for instance. But yeah, we're absolutely eating our own dog food.
Yeah, and how good is it? I mean, because it sounds almost like a script out of a science fiction movie, right? For, having AI that generates content that's good enough for it to kind of be your brand. I mean, that's taking a fair bit of, I wouldn't say commercial risk, but certainly a business risk in terms of trusting AI to generate something that, that may be good enough to represent you as a brand. How have you been able to, I guess, be comfortable that it's at a level that it's good enough?
Well, for the first thing, straight up, that risk doesn't actually exist. I think people think it is, but because we aren't, it's not a marketing automation. The AI is not generating it and publishing it without human intervention. The human intervention is critical. So ultimately, if you publish something that is of business risk or a risk to your business, well, that is actually on you because you're the one that's still actually editing it and taking responsibility for validating the information in the content and also editing it and before publishing. So the second thing, because the second thing though with it is that this is about providing you a tool to be able to do things faster, not to abdicate responsibility. And I think very clear this is not about replacing people, it's about making people more efficient.
And how do you make sure? I mean, did you have a point as you were developing the platform where it was probably not good enough, not good enough, good enough, not good enough? At what point did you feel like it was good enough for the AI to be able to generate good enough content before you kind of felt it was ready for the market?
So interestingly enough, that we still have that problem right now. We're currently at the moment working on a content type that we're not comfortable with the output. So we have about 50 or 60 different types of content that we're actively working on, and different levels of quality in each of those. So on an individual basis, we won't release a content type until we're comfortable on two things. One, that the quality is good enough. Secondly, it's also about making sure that the content is actually valuable as a type to our audience, because our avatar or our customer for the platform is a business owner or entrepreneur that is struggling with marketing their business. We don't want to be filling them with a whole lot of different like song lyric content types, for instance, in the public face. That's just not going to be useful for them. It's got to be something that's going to actually be of benefit for them. That's something that's really, really critically important for us, is to do that. In regards to our platform, on the other hand, though, one of the reasons why we didn't rush to market like a lot of our competitors did is I fundamentally believed that we needed to be able to service our customer avatar, which was a struggling entrepreneur, a business owner who doesn't have a lot of marketing experience, doesn't necessarily know what the word copy means or other kind of jargon in copywriting terms, and needed a solution that just got the job done without having to think about it. And that took a little bit longer for us. So we probably had more issues, I suppose, in getting the platform right, more so than the individual content, because the actual underlying AI is actually pretty amazing and can generate content pretty much out of the box with only a couple of hours work.
Are there specific types of content where you're feeling so proud of? Like, are there specific, yeah, I mean, you mentioned there are 50 plus types. What are the top one? Like, what is the number one?
For me, I like probably the Facebook and the LinkedIn for different reasons. The LinkedIn one, I think generally gives a really good result most of the time. Although, I actually jokingly say, we all have a bad day. The AI has a bad minute, because if you don't like what it generates, you can just click the button again and it will generate another 3 sets of content for you. But I also like the Facebook one because the Facebook one's fun, and it actually will put in emoticons. It will put in, it actually writes like a human. And we did some fun ones the other day where it was writing about our new kittens. And so instead of just writing cute, it went C and then had like 4 or 5 U's TE. So it understood that humans don't just write cute, that they extrapolate it out and have this really cute sort of feeling. And so I love that fact that you are getting that fun frivolity aspect in a Facebook post, because that's what people do in Facebook posts. And it even had, for business orientated ones, the emoji where it, sort of pointed down, comments below. And so it understood the context of getting people to encourage people to engage with the content. And for me, that takes a lot of weight off the shoulders of the business owner, because it gives them ideas. Because even if you don't use the content directly and you just work on it, it's giving you a place to start. You're now past that white paint syndrome.
And in terms of the ease of getting onto the platform, I know there are some offers out there, and you've got various different promos on as well at some point. I've looked at that and I kind of felt, wow, this is very affordable. Um, how easy or hard it is to kind of get on the platform.
Extremely easy. In fact, at the moment, and it will continue, we actually have a free forever plan. So what that means is that you can jump onto the platform simplemarketing.ai, sign up for a plan. You'll get 5 credits a month, which means you can generate 5 lots of content. That's not 5 pieces. It just depends on which content you're generating as to how many pieces you'll get. But generally, for a startup or somebody who's just really literally starting out, that's going to probably be enough to get them at least comfortable with it. Our next plan up on that though is more of a around a typical small business or an entrepreneur that really needs to market more often, like we talked about earlier. And at the moment, we're offering some really great deals around $47 US a month for that. But it gets coupled, and this is part of the other coming back to why we didn't release the platform quickly, is we've also bundled it with a membership site. And I think for me, coming back to understanding why content marketing is important, how to do content marketing, because our customer is somebody who doesn't know marketing. So just giving them the content actually doesn't solve their problem. It creates more problems for them. So we're trying to actually build a platform that helps and supports them.
So one of the things we talked off script, off air was, how you're struggling to keep up with the demand. What's that like at the moment, and how are you going about that?
Look, for the platform itself, the platform's doing fantastic. Our CTO has gone above and beyond, and we're sitting on a very stable platform that's extremely scalable. What we're finding with our front end, it's more of our marketing and the people part of the process that's falling down a little bit at the moment, and we are very rapidly behind. It's the sort of the monkeys behind the scenes running furiously, while in the front we're nice and calm and collected, which is, I think, pretty much typical IT startup situation. So yeah, look, we're having those challenges. They're great challenges to have, because it'd be worse the other way around. But yeah, and the platform can scale. Thankfully, we spent some time on that, but we need to get our marketing automation processes in place.
As a marketing expert, are you one of those scenarios where the plumber has a leaky tap in the home, or are you just being very critical to yourself?
Probably a little bit of both. Look, I think when I say we're rapidly adapting and responding to our market, which is part of and as I said, we're a product of our own success, which is a absolutely fantastic and awesome thing to be. Yeah, there's a little bit of that. We definitely have a lot of plans. I'm very much around the planning and the strategic and the roadmap. I thought I had mapped and mitigated all contingencies, but there were a few that came out of the woodworks that I wasn't expecting. And it's a good thing that we have to bring on staff that we weren't planning to bring on for a couple of months.
What's an example of that?
Well, we need at the moment a copywriter, more for the sales copy side. Not, as I mentioned before, there is a distinct difference between sales copy and content that's used to market your business. So we need somebody who can keep up with the number of different channels that we're working with. One of the other things that we're needing is an operations manager to essentially run interference with staff and myself and the co-founders, because we're finding we're either putting out fires or dealing with specific things around staff, which is taking us away from dealing with the customers, or conversely, we're ignoring the staff and not looking after the customers and our strategic partners. So that person, bringing that person on is going to be, I think, really critical very quickly. And, just to be able to throw things back to that person and say, here, you take care of this for me while I'm actually continuing to ride the momentum that we've generated.
Given your startup is still at an early stage, and you're getting traction, at what point do you think you'll get to a point where you become more of a people manager as opposed to one that's out there, the face of the company? I see you pretty much anytime I get onto Clubhouse, and I don't do enough of Clubhouse, but every time I get in Clubhouse, I see Suzette popping up. How do you manage with time, and at what point do you think that you'll end up becoming people manager and you won't have time for Clubhouse? Or How do you deal with these
Well,
complexities?
this is exactly the issue that we're dealing with right now, and this is part of the reason why essentially we want to bring this person in to run interference for me, and also for the other founders, because we already are at that point where we are, juggling managing people because we've already brought on quite a number of staff in different locations. The other part of it is also though it's actually constraining our ability to grow if I'm not in Clubhouse. And I joke around now about the fact that I'm now going, my entire role is going to be talking to people. And that actually, in all seriousness, that actually is my role. And when I'm not talking to either strategic partners or getting in and being the face or the brand ambassador, and Clubhouse is my channel, it works the best with my personality and the way I react, and it's also where we're getting the most traction. We're actually slowing our growth, ironically enough. So that person is very critical because that person needs to be the person who is the people manager. While we do that, we're constraining.
So speaking of leadership style, how do you describe your leadership style and building up different levels of leadership within your C-suite, effectively your co-founders, and how is that shaping as you shifted from pre-MVP, now post-MVP, and now getting traction? How is that shifting at the leadership level? I mean, at the management level, vis-a-vis your team, and how do you see going forward your leadership style?
Look, I think I'm very lucky and fortunate in the fact that I have run a company. It was a multi-million-dollar consulting company to government, so I understood good corporate governance and leadership and styles. So part of what it was putting in a good structure, an organizational structure that was flexible enough to grow with us as we grew. We had a clear set of responsibilities and clear set of duties between the three founders, but also between this, to an extent, the staff as well. And from the very beginning, even though, like for instance, I'm the CEO, in regards to technical things, the CTO has the final say. In regards to the CMO, originally that was the case, but interestingly enough, like a typical startup, things adapt and change. What we have found recently, and part of our corporate structure reshuffling, is I've essentially become the CMO as well, and the current CMO, Craig Tomler, will most likely be stepping up into a product manager role and taking full, and that has been pretty much what he has been taking on over the last few months. So formalizing that as that his sort of department as such. So I think it's being, even when you're only two or three of you and you're only founders, it's very clear. It's very important to have that clear responsibility, have the hats that you're going to wear clear from the very beginning. So for me, from a leadership style, is understanding what hats I'm currently wearing and what hats I'm going to pass over to staff as they come on. So managing people at the moment is one of those. I very rapidly need to pass that over to another person purely because it is stunting our growth as a result. And so I think an issue that a lot of founders have is particularly when they're small, they mix them all together. They don't clearly work out which roles and which responsibilities go with each role and which role they actually have, so that when they actually bring people on, they can pass those roles over and those responsibilities over easily without having to sit down and try to work it all out.
So as you think about, I mean, if you reflect back some of the conversations we had in the incubator program, and this is kind of seems like a lifetime ago, there's a lot of things that we talked about. You've gone ahead and done it. So much so that you've excelled at it, and now it almost looking back, thinking, oh my God, did I really pitch that? Do you have any moments like that you could share?
I think that's pretty much our last entire 4 to 5 months, really. I look at the pitch deck that we did at the beginning. I remember what we actually submitted to you for the application and where we were even just at the end of the actual program. There was significant difference. With saying that though, fundamentally though, the pitch deck that we developed and the pitch that we from that at the end of the incubator is fundamentally still pretty much our pitch now. It has been refined. The numbers definitely have been refined, but the messaging also has as well. We've got, through the incubator, we got a lot of clarity around who we actually, I knew nebulously who we were servicing and what the problem was, but we got a lot of clarity around that. And the pitching of it each week meant that we got that feedback and we were able to adapt. But even now, like it's almost like, our entire messaging is on steroids. So I'll try, one of the things I do like about the Clubhouse is I can try a messaging one day, adapt. We can even, in some cases, actually adapt our platform in response to that and get definable results pretty much immediately from that, and see, and that sort of, it's the whole MVP process on steroids.
We've talked. I mean, we spent theoretically talking about the whole idea of customer engagement and product fit for market, etc., etc. How has that changed now? Because I think when we first started talking about that, it was your ideas, your own experiences, and you're overlaying that to what needs to get into the platform, and then and validating based your own experiences and experiences of questions that we used to ask. I mean, this is like going way back. What's it like now?
We're getting instant feedback, and that's really, really fantastic because we can adapt very quickly. And we have it was when we first started out and we started building our MVP, our development team, and we had some issues and things. Took us a little while to get into the flow. Now we have a development team that turns things around. We've brought forward things on the roadmap I didn't expect to get till April or May, and we're not far off being able to release them now. And part of that's come from the customer engagement, understanding and reprioritizing what our customers are likely or want, what they're asking for. When we were doing through the incubator, we were talking to a number of our customers, but we probably weren't talking to them in the same way. And we were basing it more on feedback that we were getting, sort of maybe probably more passively. Now we're getting that very much active engagement of somebody will go and sign up and come back and say, oh, this is not working, or this is awesome, or this is fantastic. And we can actually then adapt accordingly and see the results pretty much immediately.
So I know we've talked about projections, and I'd hate to label on the term projections, and you've blown your projections already since launch in the last 3-4 weeks. Do you have any other target, say, by the end of the year?
You know what? I really can't see that far ahead anymore. It's the time frames that we are working on now has meant that even 2 or 3 months is a long period of time, and we're adapting and changing things. I thought we had a clear structure of what was going to be by then. We're blowing those out of the water within months of what they were originally. So yeah, look, no, I don't actually even want to hazard a guess.
So I'm going to pass this over to our production team and see if there's any questions coming in from the floor.
So if someone who prefers classic marketing decides to use artificial intelligence in their business, how should they change their marketing strategy in order to integrate AI in the best way?
Well, from my perspective, you're not actually changing. It is actually still traditional marketing. This is about, as I mentioned, as a productivity tool. It's not about changing your marketing. If you've got a good process already working, this is an adjunct to that. It actually helps you be able to action that particular marketing strategy faster, not actually to replace it.
Awesome. Is there any other question that's coming in as well, Danny?
There is a long one. So I'll actually just explain it. As you know, like artificial intelligence with the progression, it creates more disruption in the community in terms of ethical stuff. As you said, like the AI makes so many things now, like the scripts, podcast scripts, like show notes, music, like content ideas. At the point when the AI will learn do do everything perfectly, what other people will do who was doing this job before?
I don't believe that this is ultimately what this is doing is replacing the low value parts of doing this process. It's not about replacing people, it's about enabling them to be able to do more. And that also means being able to step up in regards to, like in the case of marketing, it's being able to improve the quality of the marketing. I think we're still suffering to an extent. We say we get a huge amount of marketing each day, each second. And the reality is some of it's not that good. So I think the use of things like AI in a lot of this technology is an enabler to get better quality. Humans are not being replaced. I think we're being challenged to better ourselves and to better what we do.
So with that, Suzette, the last question I have is, what do you see the future of simplemarketing.ai?
Well, originally, if you'd asked me that question a couple of weeks ago, I would have had probably a very different answer. But where I think it is now is for us, it's fast tracking the plans that we already had in place. It's about growing the platform, being able to enable business owners and entrepreneurs to be able to quickly start marketing. We've got a number of things in our roadmap that we'll be bringing in, but as a company, I want us to grow and become an ecosystem. It's not about just providing a content engine. It's about providing a channel for entrepreneurs and business owners to better provide better quality marketing for their business.
Excellent. Well, that's all the time we have, Suzette, for this. Suzette, thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a delight.